Lam Tian couldn't believe his eyes. He was completely shocked to discover that the woman before him had such a strange and horrifying power. While he was still trying to figure out how to handle this bizarre situation, the Goblin Slayer made a sudden, gruesome move. The goblin named Gru, already lying on the ground, had stopped attacking. In a split second, she widened her eyes, plunged her hand into Gru's chest, and tore out his heart. Lifting it to her mouth, she licked it with ghastly pleasure, remarking that a human heart was the perfect source of strength for her. Lam Tian watched in horror, unable to believe that someone with a reputation for hunting goblins and standing for justice could do something so monstrous. After feeding on Gru's heart, the Goblin Slayer dashed toward the remaining goblins. Her speed was astonishing, and her power overwhelming. They didn't stand a chance. One after another, the goblins fell. Furious at the sight of his comrades being slaughtered, Goblin let out a wild roar, cursed the Goblin Slayer, and charged at her. Before he could land a blow, she threw a sword straight through his body. Almost immediately, she unleashed a massive fireball that exploded on impact, leaving Goblin utterly defeated. Lam Tian trembled with fear. Who is this woman? He wondered. How can she devour goblins and annihilate a mutant goblin with just one attack? Realizing how dangerous things were becoming, Lam Tian knew his top priority was to save as many of his own tribe members as possible. He quickly ordered Ephraud to stop treating their injured goblins and follow him, then he commanded the other goblins to retreat. With that decided, Lam Tian flew toward the Goblin Slayer. Noticing his approach, she paused her ruthless slaughter. She looked at him with a frosty smile and said, "It's been ages since I've seen a goblin as strong as you. If you let me study you, I won't just spare your life, I might even help you save your mutated goblin." Lam Tian was completely taken aback. "You really expect me to believe that?" he asked suspiciously. The Goblin Slayer smiled again, eyes gleaming with hidden motives. "You don't believe me?" As she spoke, she removed the armor from her upper body, exposing her alluring figure in an attempt to show her so-called goodwill and convince Lam Tian to trust her. Lam Tian remained wary. He couldn't accept that she would so casually throw aside her weapons and armor. But given her terrifying strength, it was clear that his tribe wouldn't stand a chance against her right now. After hesitating, he ordered his dragon to land and cautiously removed his own cloak. Step by step, he moved closer. "What do you want from me?" he asked, unsure of her true motives. Seeing his small, unimpressive form, the Goblin Slayer was surprised to learn he was actually just a low-level goblin. Her expression hinted that she had expected someone far more formidable. Feeling belittled, Lam Tian felt a surge of anger. "I've done what you asked," he said. "Didn't you say you could save my goblins?" She pulled out a small needle and licked it, grinning. "Don't worry, I'll keep my promise. But first, I need you to entertain me." In the split second when Lam Tian's guard was down, the Goblin Slayer hurled the needle at him, and a paralyzing pain spread through his body. It was so intense he could barely stand. She sauntered over and said calmly that her favorite pastime was tracking down powerful goblins, satisfying her twisted desires, and then killing them. Even though Lam Tian was only a low-level goblin, his intelligence rivaled that of a goblin cane, making him an irresistible target in her eyes. Enraged, Lam Tian realized he had been duped. He desperately looked around, hoping one of his goblins would come to his rescue, but he was met with their retreating backs. Furious, he shouted, "Why are you turning your backs on me?" The Goblin Slayer laughed coldly. "They're all under my control now, of course. And I won't let them see what's about to happen." Unable to resist, Lam Tian felt her press up against him from behind. She whispered into his ear, "Don't worry. I won't kill you. I want to stay here with you. I'm dying to know what a clever goblin tastes like. I'm curious about what you might become if we combine." Moments later, she kissed him passionately, and what followed was a set of wild actions that could make anyone's imagination run wild. Nearby, Earl witnessed the entire scene. He had been rescued by the Goblin Slayer earlier and had lingered nearby to see what was going on. Now he was filled with dread. Clamping his hand over his mouth to stifle any sounds, he couldn't believe the Goblin Slayer was actually a woman, nor could he accept the disturbing spectacle of her entangled with a goblin. Earl's hesitation proved fatal. A goblin snuck up from behind and killed him in an instant. Time crawled by. 10 minutes, 30 minutes, maybe an hour. Eventually, the struggles between Lam Tian and the Goblin Slayer came to an end. While the remaining goblins cleaned up the battlefield, Lam Tian and the Goblin Slayer talked. She shrugged off his threats about the goblin den and simply said, "I told you, I want to test your strength to the limit." As long as you can keep up, I don't care about the consequences. Furious, Lambton demanded, who are you? And what is this strange power that lets you control my goblins and even me? She replied casually, if I tell you everything, will you let me follow you? Lambton said that his decision would depend on the answers she gave him. Ignoring him, she wandered deeper into the lair. As she passed by him, she leaned in and revealed something shocking. I am descended from the Goblin King. Lambton froze at her words. After the exhausting battle, her sudden claim that she was a descendant of the Goblin King left him stunned. He demanded, are you serious? How can you be a Goblin King's descendant when you look so human? She sighed and stopped walking. My mother was human, she said simply. She then explained that her mother had been captured and forced into slavery by goblins. Her father was the son of Goblin Kane, a high-level goblin. Normally, such goblins found it difficult to produce strong offspring. But she was an exception, strong and fully alive. 10 years ago, she personally killed the Goblin Kane who had once tried to violate her. After devouring him, she absorbed the royal bloodline's power and gained the ability to control other goblins. Then she eradicated the entire goblin tribe. Lambton couldn't help noticing the madness in her eyes as she told her story. He remarked that she could control goblins because of the Goblin King's bloodline. She gave him a smug look and explained, when I forge my weapons, I mix my blood into them. Any goblin injured by my weapons will be cursed and become unable to rebel. They either obey me or die. She revealed that the real reason she became a goblin hunter wasn't some noble quest for revenge. She simply enjoyed challenging the strongest goblins and slaughtering them herself. After hearing this, Lambton had a better grasp of why she was so twisted. He even felt a bit sorry for her. Realizing it would be disastrous to have her as an enemy, he made an offer. Since we share some common ground, why don't you join us? To his surprise, she laughed heartily. How interesting. I thought I'd have to force you into submission. But it looks like that won't be necessary anymore. Lambton was left speechless, unsure how to continue. The Goblin Slayer casually put on her helmet again and announced that she would leave the tribe for a while. She believed that infiltrating the City of Light as a spy for Lambton would be far more entertaining than sticking around the goblin camp. Her words caught Lambton off guard. Are you really doing this to help me? He asked. She glanced at him. Because you're mine, obviously. I have to protect what belongs to me, she answered bluntly, leaving him momentarily stunned as he watched her disappear from sight. Not long after, Lambton returned to his cave. For the first time since merging with the Goblin Slayer, he checked his own stats. His level was now 55, his health 1950, attack 650, defense 1450, and overall power 2200. He even had new abilities like Weapon Steal, Sharp Reflexes, Trustworthy, and Unleash Potential in critical situations. Lambton was amazed by the boost in his power. His thoughts were interrupted by a commotion from the prisoner's area, where he discovered that Earl was, in fact, not dead. Earl had spotted Loader still alive and started shouting, "Cousin, you're alive. Ha, you're nothing but a scoundrel, you've ruined our family's honor. No wonder the Sword Saint didn't bother to save you in person." Loader only gave a cold smile in return. Worthless. Enjoy your last moments. See that pot over there? You'll die long before I do. Earl paled at this threat, but a hulking goblin seized him and dragged him toward a giant pot of boiling water. He pleaded, "Don't kill me. I'm a noble. I can give you money, women." Still, the goblin marched on, ignoring him. Then Loader spoke up, telling the goblin to halt because he wanted to speak with the tribe's leader. Drawn by the noise, Lambton approached slowly. "It's been a while since you said anything," he observed coolly. "You usually just stay silent." Loader looked at him and made a bold offer. He asked Lambton to spare Earl, claiming he would do anything Lambton wanted. Earl's face lit up with hope, and he begged his cousin for forgiveness. But Lambton only sneered. "You're both prisoners. You have no right to bargain." Suddenly, Loader's calm expression twisted. His eyes flared red with hatred. He demanded that Lambton chop off Earl's legs before letting him go, so Earl could return to his family and bring back an even stronger rescue party, which Lambton could then defeat. Loader also expressed hope that the Goblin Slayer wouldn't escape. Earl was horrified, unable to believe that such cruel words had come from someone as once proud as Loader. But after being imprisoned and tortured for so long, Loader's mind had grown twisted. He believed everyone needed to die. Lambton smiled. "You're serious, aren't you? Very well, I'll consider it." At his words, Loader began laughing maniacally, spewing nonsense. Nearby, the elf queen overheard Loder's plan and warned Lam Tien that freeing Earl could reveal their location to outsiders. Lam Tien just grinned. "Don't worry. I have everything under control." Meanwhile, back in the City of Light, a pub was buzzing with chaos. A man burst in, exclaiming that Earl had shown up in town with one of his legs severed. Everyone was in shock. "Is it true that Gru and the Snowstorm team are all dead?" someone asked. Goblin Slayer then walked into the pub, confirming that Gru's group had indeed fallen and that only Earl survived. She ordered a drink, and a worried onlooker asked if she had taken part in that battle. Nodding, she was about to speak when a man dressed in black approached her, wanting details on the goblins. The Goblin Slayer answered calmly, saying there had been hundreds of giant goblins, including mutants, but she had killed them all. Everyone in the pub gaped at her in awe, praising her legendary talent as a Goblin Slayer. Suddenly, a piercing cry filled the tavern, and filthy bats swarmed in out of nowhere, terrifying the patrons. As everyone scrambled for weapons, Goblin Slayer stayed relaxed and kept sipping her drink. She glanced at the bats with glowing red eyes and said mockingly, "They're just mercenaries who like to operate in the dark, but I do like the dramatic entrance." A chilling voice came from a bat with razor-sharp fangs. "Goblin Slayer, you say you fought hundreds of goblins. Did you find their lair?" It was clear they wanted crucial information. Even so, Goblin Slayer stayed calm. He claimed he hadn't discovered the lair's exact location yet but intended to go back and wipe them out eventually. Impressed but impatient, the bat offered to handle the search if Goblin Slayer joined forces with them to destroy the goblins. Goblin Slayer simply got up and left, declaring that he preferred not to work at night or team up with strangers. The Bat Commander, both angry and disappointed, settled for the idea that at least they wouldn't have to share the bounty if they handled things on their own. As the scene shifted to the demon forest at night, a dense swarm of bats blotted out the moonlight, creating an eerie atmosphere. They landed near the battlefield where Lin Tion's group and the Blizzard team had fought earlier. The Bat Commander sniffed the air, determining that the Goblin tribe must be behind the waterfall. The bats flew into the cave, initially unnoticed by the Goblin guards, since bats in a cave weren't unusual. When they reached the main area of the cave, the bats realized there were plenty of goblins, but only a single mutant among them. This tribe didn't seem to match Goblin Slayer's story of giant goblins, so they assumed it would be easy to take them out. They decided to attack, planning to drain every goblin of blood. But just as they swooped down, a brilliant beam of light struck them. They were caught off guard and slammed against the cave walls. Ephra, the holy woman, appeared with a steely gaze, weapon in hand. One bat recognized her instantly and knew they had fallen into Lam Tien's trap. More giant goblins emerged, brandishing torches that flared with a red light, cornering the bats. In a panic, one of the smaller bats cried out to its commander, "We can't escape. What do we do?" That's when Lin Tian, another name Lam Tien sometimes goes by in the text, arrived. With a cold expression, he declared, "You dared to come here to suck blood? Let's see what you're made of." The Bat Commander locked eyes on Lin Tian, realizing he was the leader of the goblins. Suddenly, the bats changed shape, transforming into beautiful women. One of them, brimming with confidence, sneered, "Now that our cover's blown, we'll just have to destroy you. You're only a bunch of small fry goblins anyway." Unbothered, Lin Tian calmly used a skill to scan the leading vampire's information. A system window appeared, showing that her name was Lily, a level 61 vampire countess with a range of powers, blood drain, bloodthirst, and shadow transformation, and a combat power of 2,800. Lin Tian realized she was strong but also felt lucky that he'd prepared after receiving warnings about these so-called cold-blooded mercenaries. Lily took flight with a powerful flap of her wings, stirring up a shockwave that sent many goblins stumbling backward. "Let's see if your fire burns me first," she taunted, "or if I kill you all before that happens." Smiling confidently, Lin Tian signaled the goblins to move. A group of towering goblins stepped forward, all chanting in unison, "Hallelujah." A brilliant golden light radiated from them, holy energy, a vampire's worst nightmare. The vampires screamed in agony, unable to resist. Lily was left in disbelief, wondering how mere goblins could wield such power. But it was already too late. Overwhelmed by the holy light, they were completely suppressed. Satisfied, Lin Tian told his goblins to stand down. He stepped forward and spoke directly to Lily. "Fighting any further benefits neither of us," he said. "Why don't we sit down and talk? You came here for a bounty, right? But I don't understand what vampires need money for." Lily averted her gaze, reluctantly admitting, We made a pact with the church and the sword saint, no attacking humans. But we have to purchase our blood supply or starve. That's why we need money. Her answer startled Lin Tian, who immediately saw an opportunity. If he could recruit these vampires, they would make a powerful addition to his tribe. And so, the tense standoff in the cave turned into an unexpected chance for alliance and negotiation, as both the goblins and the vampires realized they might share common goals, and face even greater threats together. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Speaking of which, this video has chapters 30 through 32, so if you want to see the next chapters, write the secret word in the comments. Vampire. That way I'll know that you've watched this video to the end. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you later and bye-bye.